So I'm Fee Rodden, and I'm co-leading some of the looking after our people work in the South East for NHS Improvement, but my normal role is also head of talent for the South East. Flexible working is something that is really close to my heart, something that's so important to me, and I feel very privileged today to be talking to Anna Whitehouse, who you might know as Mother Pucker, and leads Flex Appeal and is a real leading light in championing flexible working across all sorts of sectors and backgrounds, as well as the wonderful Jarman and Aasha Cowey, who, on top of very busy home lives and work lives, have founded and are leading Flex NHS, which is a campaign for flexible working within the NHS. I'll let people sort of introduce themselves a bit more properly than that. I've also got my daughter in the background, so you might be able to hear a few interruptions. But we're here to have a conversation about what flexible working. I think we might have to redo that bit, sorry.
I think carry on.
I think it's great.
This is the reality.
It is. This is what flexible working looks like.
Do outtakes.
It will be blooper reel.
At the end.
So it's really wonderful to have you all here. I'm going to ask you all to just introduce yourselves and why flexible working is so important to you. And we're here to just have a conversation about flexible working in the pandemic, during lockdown, post-lockdown, and what it's going to look like. So I'm going to go first to Kate, if that's okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Jarman. I'm Director of Corporate Affairs at Milton Keynes Hospital in my day job, and as Fee said, co-founded Flex NHS with Aasha and partnered with Anna really early on. Anna backed us kind of from day one, which has been amazing. It's been a wonderful relationship to have. I'm, as well as sort of doing my regular job, which is a lot around compliance and legal work and communications, we lead a lot of work here at Milton Keynes on wellbeing for staff, and so flexible working and the workplace wellbeing agenda for me is a real passion and really important.
Thanks, Kate. Aasha, do you want to say a little bit about why flexible working is so important to you?
Hi, so I'm Aasha Cowey. I'm a programme manager at South Central and West CSU, and workstream lead for establishing the NHS Digital Academy with HEE. That's a bit of a mouthful on top of Flex NHS, but it's all good. So for me, why flexible working is so important is I think it allows people to be more authentic in themselves. If we can get the language around it right and make it supportive, it lets people continue to do jobs that they love and not feel like they're having to force between their personal lives and their careers. And I think finally we have to stop flexible working or lack of flexible working be a barrier to getting underrepresented groups around the table. So that's why it's important to me.
Okay, this is okay. You're gonna have to wait just a minute. Anna, why is flexible working so important to you?
So yeah, I launched Flex Appeal when my flexible working request was denied, and the reason given was that it would open the floodgates to others seeking flexible working. And I remember quitting in that moment thinking, well, why can't you open the floodgates? People are drowning behind them. And I think really the focus for me has been on talent, has been on looking to what this can do for businesses. My frustration at businesses seeing this as something they have to do, like a bonus ball or an extra, when actually it's a fundamental shift in the way we work for, you know, those with caring responsibilities, those living with disabilities, those simply wanting to live. I think my focus here is to remove the conversation from it being a parental one to a people one.
Absolutely. And that's a really important point for me, because, you know, I'm, as you can tell, mum of 2 small kids, and I've also got long-term health conditions and neurodivergent, and so flexible working has, I would say, almost quite literally saved my life. I just really don't see that I would still be working now if my employer weren't flexible. So very close to my heart. What's going on for all of you at the moment around flexible working in the pandemic? You know, what's different now?
Shall I start with that? So what's different about working in the pandemic currently? So I've been working in an acute hospital throughout the pandemic, and for our staff, it's been obviously incredibly difficult, on an understatement really. We've seen our workforce completely transform the way it's worked. So obviously we've had staff working in our frontline services. They've had to change role, they've been doing different jobs, they've been redeployed to support frontline care. They've been working in roles that have been highly traumatizing, dealing with death on a scale that they are not used to dealing with. And it's been an incredibly difficult time. Sorry, I feel a bit emotional talking about that actually. And also we've seen staff obviously are working from home. So a huge number of our workforce worked from home or worked in a model that was blended through that period of time. So worked partly in the trust and partly at home. So we've really revolutionised our ways of working. We've introduced lots of technology to support that, whether it's things like using Microsoft Teams, which we'd never used before, to this extent, to enable people to work from home and keep connected, or running virtual clinics to allow our clinicians to work from home and balance their home lives with their working lives as well. And lots of staff have sacrificed their time and family time coming into work and staying away from their families for weeks and months to enable them to carry on providing services. So it's been a huge shift in all sorts of different directions for us, and I think there's some great things that we can learn from what we've delivered and done over the pandemic, but there's some stuff we absolutely don't want to take forward with us.
Anna, just aware that you're seeing this across sectors as well, is there anything else that's going on around flexible working that you think other people should be aware of?
Yeah, so we launched the Flex Forever Flexible Working Beyond a Crisis report in December 2020, so after sort of second lockdown, and we partnered with Sir Robert McAlpine on that. They funded the report, and their reasoning for doing it was for the 8,000 construction workers who had committed suicide within their industry, and they realised that flexible working had an inextricable link to reducing that rate. So I think it was looking at lots of different industries. We interviewed 1,420 companies, private sector, public sector. And the one word that kept coming out of the embers of this pandemic was they said next generation working. So to stop looking at this as flexible working, to start looking at this as talent-led working. And I think that's where it comes down to what you were saying. And also the kickback that I have had is people are just done with working from home. And there are people say, can you stop please fighting for this? And I'm like, I'm not fighting for you to be strapped to your kitchen table over your, ward or your office. I'm fighting for there to be trust at the core of this, for somebody to look at Fiona Rodden and go, she has 2 children and she's living with these issues, and how can we help her work for us in a way that benefits the company, always putting the company at the heart of it. And I think the very simple elevator pitch from the Flex Forever report is to put humans above your business, to just go beyond focus on what the humans need within your business, but for business benefit. And I think that you need to lead with the human, and then the business comes along as kind of, a nice side bonus ball almost. But if you put the humans there and you ask, each individual within your team what they need to work better for them, whether it is, working remotely, whether it is coming in, ebbing and flowing between your ward or home, but just having the open-mindedness to approach a working world post-pandemic that is genuinely open to everyone and genuinely is inclusive and diverse, instead of just recruiting diversity and inclusion officers to say the right words and actually not do the right thing.
We started moving in this direction already, but one of the things I'm really adamant about is that during the pandemic, the way that we have been working isn't truly flexible working. I just wondered what your thoughts on that were. I mean, I think I've seen a few nods. Do you want to come in on that, Aasha?
So it's been a really hard year. I think this week, next week, roughly marks to the year since I have seen another colleague in person, other than Nikki, the director of primary care, running through my village for a charity event. I haven't seen another colleague for a year, and it's been really hard. I've worked from home that whole time. I think the key message for me is working from home is not the same as flexible working. You know, in a way, it can be less flexible because actually your home and your work environment merge. There's no escape. Some of my colleagues, you know, some people in my team have never met any of their colleagues in person, and some people are just not set up to work from home. They don't have the space, they don't have the equipment. And I know a lot of organisations have, you know, done everything they can to support individuals, but actually, you know, if you don't have the space where you live to actually even have a desk, that's really, really tough. And I get why, you know, eliminating risk, it's, you know, the best thing for me to do is to work from home, but it's hard. I miss people a lot, and I just want to hug people, and I can't wait to see people, and you know, it's very weird. But I think there are some real benefits to the way we're moving forwards with using virtual and using technology. That would be really helpful. In my day job, I currently do quite a lot around upskilling the health and care workforce with digital skills, just a small remit, and it's a brilliant program of work. And the bit I specifically lead on at the moment is around expanding something called the NHS Digital Academy, and that's something that's traditionally been a face-to-face learning experience with blended learning, and it's had to go fully virtual for cohort 3 because of the pandemic, and they managed to pull it off. But what is really interesting and what that actually has enabled has, for some people, actually, if they've had caring responsibilities or disabilities, going fully virtual has enabled some people to engage with that who would have struggled beforehand. So there's definitely something about, yes, remote working and flexible working are absolutely not the same thing, but there is definitely some positives we can take from it that will make things more inclusive for people that previously were not around the table. Fiona, I wondered if you had any personal reflections on that.
I think that's a really great point, because as somebody who has been working from home since way before the pandemic, I have felt really excluded from a lot of the virtual calls that we've had. I've often been on a blank screen or at the end of a spider phone, and people sort of forget that you're there and are talking around the room, and it's a sort of, oh, I'm sorry you can't hear, but do you want to chime in here? And in terms of development, you know, flexible working and working different hours does make spending time on your development quite difficult, and you can feel a bit guilty about taking that time out when you're kind of already doing so. So I think it is really important that we approach this thinking about people who are excluded. And I say that, you know, whether that's disabilities, hearing impairments, whether it's visual impairments, whether it's physical reasons that they can't be in the room, or whatever else, it's really important we include all.
Well, just to pick up on your point, I heard from a lot of people within the first lockdown who were living with disabilities, who had applied for jobs that they'd been rejected from because they were in office 5 days a week. And then they said the issue was everybody was celebrating this seeming working from home and releasing of the 9-to-5 shackles. And they said all it said to us was those companies didn't want us, because within 48 hours, it was indeed possible to work in that way. And I think that is what I want to see this pandemic doing is, you know, obviously it's been a catastrophic situation. It's been devastating across the board, but the positives, the glimmers of light we can pull from this are opening the doors, thinking, I think, creatively. That's the word that I think gets like lopped off the table, is people feel they need to ask permission to implement flexible working. And that is something I think we really need to break down. The managerial fear from from what? You know, we need more communication within the NHS as to good examples, which is what the Flex Forever report gives. It's almost top trump cards of how companies have done it, the challenges they faced. You know, this isn't going to be easy. And anybody watching this, it's not going to be an easy process, but it's an essential process. And we're now in, I think, transition. And I think that has been the biggest plus for me, has been seeing the companies, the managers who have been doggedly against working this way have no choice. It wasn't their choice to make in the end. So I think, you know, in terms of what we can do moving forward, I mentioned to you earlier about Birmingham Women's Hospital. It was removing that sense of ownership of employees. So currently we do 468 hours of unpaid overtime a year. So flexible working has been going one way from employee to employer almost. We've just been handing over our time and our lives, and all we're pushing for is it to go the other way, or to meet in the middle, like a relationship. And I think the matron at Birmingham Women's Hospital, when they trialled flexible working in one ward, all they did was sit down, all of the nurses, saying, what is the rub in your day? What is the frustrations that you face? And how can we meet in the middle? And the way they worked, it was that all of the nurses wanted to sort of argue amongst themselves who did what shift. So that somebody who had a nativity play could say, well, I'm going to do that, but I know your dad's got Alzheimer's and you like to bake him a cottage pie on a Wednesday night. Very human conversations were happening within a team that was then empowered. And then they informed the matron of what they were doing. So she had this huge space appear in her working day to do her job better, because she wasn't wrangling with timing. She was empowering her workforce. And there were challenges within that, but ultimately they retained more staff. Talent was put at the core of this, and it was a happier, healthier working environment. And I hope that the sort of blueprint from those examples gets translated in a very real way post-pandemic across the NHS.
I think that's really important. I'm curious, because this is something that is incredibly important to me, and I will have a conversation with every single member of my team, not only to empower them to have flexible working, but to actively encourage it for whatever reason. And there is no kind of you have to be in a certain group to get this. This is for you to get the best out of your work so that we can kind of get the best out of you. So I just wondered, Aasha and Kate, from your experiences in your current environment, what aspects have been helpful to kind of encourage flexible working? What's been an enabler?
So I think from my perspective, there is something about the permission. So permission stopped being an issue. I mean, as Anna has just described, really, because it was a situation where people had to work flexibly. So that sort of went out of the window. I think there's, you know, technology is really important. And actually, if we want to do flexible blended models of working long term, then technology is going to be vital, and investing in technology to enable people to work and provide services differently and access services differently is going to be really important. So if we, you know, actually as a hospital, we want to be able to provide more virtual services. We want to be able to provide appointments and change models of care so that people can access them from home more easily, and they can and because it's more appropriate for them, and actually it's good in all sorts of ways. I think there's a huge number of linked agendas here. You know, actually it's more sustainable environmentally. It also, you know, helps hopefully to close the gender pay gap, to keep women in the workforce, etc. But all of this needs a lot of conscious, intentional management. And so actually we can't lose the part, I suppose, we can't move too fast out of the pandemic into economic recovery and getting everyone back to the way it was and just kind of moving on and forgetting all of this. We have to intentionally take forward the good, and take time to invest in those working models that are going to, and those care and delivery models, or those business models, if it's not the NHS, that are going to make a difference long term. And that's my anxiety. It's moving beyond the pandemic, is that we'll just seek to get back to normality, but actually normality wasn't working very well for huge swathes of the population, so we shouldn't seek to replicate it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Aasha, just curious, you know, what aspects of what has definitely not been normality over the last year or so, what aspects have been kind of good for you? And, you know, what do you think we need to take forward?
I think for me, a massive area is positive role modelling. So where I work at South Central and West, for example, when when the pandemic first started and all the rumblings started about homeschool and childcare settings closing, within a few days we had some really supportive comms come out from our exec team, basically telling us to, look after ourselves, put ourselves first, and we'll make it work. Talk to your managers. And it was, I think, incredibly powerful that message came from the top of the organisation, and it empowered people to do that, because there is that feeling of people don't always feel like they've got permission to do that. I remember before that comms came out having almost a meltdown to my manager, because I was getting quite stressed out at that point, where I was in a role where I could work from home, but technically I had a childcare place, and it was the dilemma about what do I do about that, and I made the decision that actually at that point, last March, to keep Alice at home. There's no right or wrong answers here. Everyone had a different situation, but I was incredibly anxious about all of that, and that message from for our exec team really helped. And I think this all links back to communication from what Kate and Anna have just said as well. And the big power, I think, of the Flex NHS community is it's often those light bulb moments for people where they realise, it's not just me, or actually I'm not the problem, it's the system that's the problem. We recently did a webinar of homeschooling, and it was very raw, very vulnerable, but it gave people that safe space to talk about it. So I think for me, it's, if you're in a role, particularly a senior leadership role, make sure you're facilitating a safe space for your teams to have those discussions, so they don't feel like they're the problem.
I think that's a really lovely point. I know personally from conversations I've had with my team, the first response to an offer of flexible working is often, no, I'm fine. And I think there is an element of that power dynamic there, that they want to please and they want to meet your needs, whereas actually just sort of trying to tip this on its head. And as you sort of said, it's about the people, not the organisation. It's a really lovely point that's been made already. I think one of the really core aspects of this for me, as a patient myself, I have a lot of medical appointments, which have all been on the phone. And, it's enabled me to be more productive. I don't take out, several hours now to get to the hospital and get back, or to get to the doctors and get back. I can kind of build it into my day better. I think one of the things that we've all in the past talked about is the benefit to patients. So I just wondered, do you have any reflections on how flexible working in a COVID world or post-COVID world is good for patients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, again, it's about valuing people's time, isn't it? So flexible working and the concepts around flexible working is all about the value of people's time, and that actually, we want to ensure people's time is well spent. And for lots of people, their time won't be well spent driving to a hospital appointment, for example, paying to park and sitting around for half a day, going in and out for tests and to wait, or for half an hour appointments, which could easily be done over the phone. So I think if we value people's time, we value that their lives in a holistic and complete way, as patients and as staff and as people generally, then we get the service model right. And we have to bend around them and flex around them, and not expect that they will flex around us all the time. So I think that for me is a really important part again, and it's about capturing that as we move forward post-pandemic and making sure we develop services in that way.
Yeah, I would mirror what Kate has said. That sort of my flexible working utopia is a world where we kind of ebb and flow between our work and our home. Now, obviously, that's going to be different for different organisations. It's going to be different for public sector, private sector. But I think that translates to patients too. Patients can have access to the NHS in a way that fits them, and a way that fits their needs. Technology is what we have now. That has been our Achilles heel in the past. It simply wasn't possible. That is the missing link here, and we need to wield it to our advantage. And I think any manager watching this right now, anybody feeling, oh gosh, it feels like another thing to do, just remember, this is not some revolution. This is just simply evolution. We are evolving, and I think the one thing that has been a positive out of the last year has been that evolution has fast-tracked, and actually we now need to use that momentum to ensure that we have the best people working for us. That if, for example, in terms of reducing footprint, we were speaking about it earlier, BT made, you know, £100 million global savings in 1 year by simply reducing their footprint, maintaining a HQ, but that money then got poured into the business at a time when the NHS is needing to retain staff on a very basic level, needs more funding. You add in the eco side of things, you add in the mental health side of things. Those almost, it's a 360-degree model as to why this is good. And my big fear, as both Aasha and Kate know, is that it's simply not a nice to have anymore. And I think it has been seen as a bonus ball. It's been seen as something you have to earn after 26 weeks in the role. And the one thing I can assure anyone watching is that together, Flex NHS, Flex Appeal, we are going to change the law. It will be for everyone, not just parents or mummies who see more of their Weetabix smattered children, which is what one Daily Mail commenter referred to me as. It's for everyone. And I think until we can change the law, we won't see a shift in the way we want it. But I think the question is, do you want to lead or do you want to follow? Because the law will change. And actually, as we saw with the pandemic, those in a position to implement the tech, those prepared or ready to go, they could pivot, they could move. Their business did not shift. Those that had that archaic industrial revolution 9 to 5 or set hours struggled, and if anything have closed down. So I think it really does come down to what's right for your business. Raise those within your business, and I guarantee you will get a financial gain, but also retention. And I think those two married together ahead of the law changing it's an essential.
Absolutely. I think that's a really wonderful point that is our sort of to close on there. This is not a choice, but we have to give people the choice. This is how we need to go forward. So I'm incredibly grateful, not only for you all to have shared your thoughts with me and everyone watching this today, but also for how you've been flexible to meet mine and my daughter's needs as well. So it's been a very real example for me today. Anyone watching this, we will share the link for the Flex Forever report and also to the Flex NHS campaign so that you can join in the conversation there. Thank you so much, Aasha, Kate and Anna, for joining me today. This has been a really wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.